Are you homeschooling two or more children and you feel like pulled in many different directions while you're educating them? Maybe you're the parent who is finding it difficult just to remain calm when you're down beside one of your children teaching them and you have calls for attention from another child. Are you concerned whether your children are learning anything? Because our time teaching them is so limited with each one of them. You're going to really enjoy today's conversation. I'm in conversation with mom of many, and we're going to be talking about homeschooling multiple ages, keeping calm while children learn. Many of us are educating more than one child at home. I have the statistic that I wanted to share. Oh, sorry, trying to make it bigger for you. It's from National Center of Educational Statistics, and it's homeschooled students by number of children in the household. And you can see that 20% of us have one child being homeschooled at home, 28% of us have two children, and 52% have three or more children. So this conversation is important, probably for 80% of those that are homeschooling. So I want to welcome you. Our attention is pulled in so many different directions during our children's homeschool day, especially when we have more than one child that we're homeschooling. Do I help the eldest with the higher level work that they're doing, or should I spend more time with my toddler? So many questions, and we all want to do our very best for our children. And we wonder if they're even learning when we're not spending a lot of time with each one of our children. My name is Diana Rolston, and I want to welcome you to Spark Homeschool Parent, where I provide strategies to ignite that spark that engages your child's learning. Whether you are homeschooling one child or many, I want to welcome you. Whether you're just thinking about homeschooling, maybe homeschooling for a few years, or if you're a veteran homeschooler and have been homeschooling for many years, I want to welcome you also. My Facebook group name, my company name is Spark, and each letter of Spark represents a word. Very important, the pillars to our homeschooling journey. Strengths, discovering our children's strengths and creating purpose with those strengths in mind. And that attitude, the A, of just creating a fun, joyful, calm learning environment for our children. And R is the reflection. Every once in a while, we got to think back of where we came from, where we're headed, maybe make a few adjustments. This month, the month of February, we're at the K. We're talking about keep it up. This is when we think about some of those fears that we have as homeschoolers, and we address them. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So this conversation is for you. If you're homeschooling more than one child and you feel pulled in different directions, because you hear cries for help or cries for attention from the child that you're not sitting with, it really brings a lot of guilt, feelings of guilt and frustration, which often bring angry words or other stresses in the house. And you want to just remain calm. You're going to enjoy the conversation today. If you're wondering if your children are actually learning with the limited time that you're able to spend with each child, and again, we put so much pressure on ourselves that we want our children to be learning at every moment during their homeschool day. And then when they're not, we feel that sense of guilt. This is Spark Homeschool Parent, and I want to thank you for joining. As our live guests are coming on, I would love it if you could just send in the comments a quick hi, and throughout our discussion, send in any questions, and I'll try to keep an eye on those comments and address the questions as they come up. I am Diana Rolston, and today's conversation is homeschooling multiple ages, keeping your calm while children learn. I have the great pleasure of Having with me today a mom of 11. Her baby Cody is just 2 months old, born in December. She says that it's been a journey of learning the hard way because she was not prepared for motherhood and was not planning to have a big family. She didn't even know how to change a diaper, which is hard to imagine. I can't even begin to count the number of diapers she's probably changed by now with baby 11. Since then, she's developed a wealth of simple systems, tips, tricks to manage her big family home and life with simplicity, ease, and grace. She says that her stress is less, her stress is lower, her confidence is higher, and her home a more joyful place to live, learn, and grow in. So she is the perfect guest to have with me today. I'd like to welcome Tara Lee Hills. Thanks very much for joining me. I know you're a busy mom.
Thank you, Diana, for having me. Yeah, I do have baby Corey on the floor right now, but I think she's out for a good long nap. Dad's at home, so I'm all yours. Oh, and by the way, I did the math of how many diapers I have changed to date.
Oh.
It's over 12,000. I had to redo it 3 times. I'm like, no. And that was a conservative average. So yeah, I now know how to change a diaper.
A pro. I'm excited about our conversation today because I often have new homeschool moms ask me, how did I homeschool 3 children, or how do they homeschool multiple children, learning different things? But I have a hard time from experience answering that question. I have 3 children, my eldest, and then I had twins born within 2 years. So I didn't really have as difficult a time, I guess, as many families do. And often I was able to teach the 3 boys at the same time. So thank you. That's you're going to be a wealth of great information for our listeners. I want to start by saying, on those times that that I felt frustration, I often attributed that to my unrealistic expectations. That's where we're going to start, and that's part of the keeping your calm in all of this. You are a busy mom. You're busy. You're a friend. You're a community volunteer. You got expectations from the church. What happens with all of these when you have your new baby come home, and your demands in the homeschool day are like just getting more and more?
That's such a good question. And I really started to feel that by the time I kind of started to add more kids into the mix. You know what? I hadn't homeschooled ever. So when I first started homeschooling my first and she was 5, I was so eager and nervous. I started at 5.
yes.
I could have waited till 6 in Ontario where we are. But then I had twins 2 years later. So they came in and I was so nervous. I remember feeling puke level nervous when September was approaching and there was no more putting it off. And I began to learn how to do it with 1 and 2. But really when the 4th one came in, that's when I started to kind of feel the panic. Even though I did it with 1, I did it with 3, what's 1 more? But I think every time we just have to almost level up with our responsibility in new territory. All of our stuff can come up, homeschooling insecurities. And I'm, also taking care, like you said, of a home. So that was the phase of my life, my journey as a mom, as a big family mom, as a homeschooling big family mom, when I really started to, like you were saying, I love that acronym, and I began to reflect and say, okay, this is not a one-size-fits-all approach. There's a lot of great information out there in the homeschool communities, whether it was my local homeschooling support group or online, like HSLDA has tons of great resources. But there's no one-size-fits-all. And in a way, I was like, just tell me what to do and tell me it'll be okay. But I also had flexibility to design a home and a lifestyle that would work for us. So what helped me was just realizing I get to design what homeschool is going to look like in my home. I didn't have like a government agency or really anybody telling me what to do. So step number 1 for me at that stage, when I start to feel my panic level rising up to here, is I set hours.
Mm.
Like you would, like if you work from home or an entrepreneur or quite frankly, any kind of professional setting, I was like, am I doing this like a hobby or am I doing this for real? And so I just kind of grew up in my own sense of I'm a homeschool mom. And I took on that identity with courage, with a little bit of trembling, but also with a sense of I have excelled in professional workplaces. I have a degree. I can do hard things. I can learn new things. So I said, this just feels like a job where I'm now learning new things. And it's okay to feel nervous and give myself all the time it's going to take to figure this out. So it's taking off that pressure. Like you said, the expectations of I have got to have this figured out now or what? And I kind of got curious of like, what am I really scared of? And when I just took some time, I'm a verbal processor. So I chatted with my husband. It's like, what am I so scared of? And I'm like, that'll ruin their lives. Plain and simple. No pressure. But am I really? I mean, we're talking at the time,
Yeah.
I was just easing into the dynamic of that would have been like what, an 8-year-old, 2 6-year-olds, and the 4-year-old coming. I was like, where's all this pressure coming from? And truthfully, there was no third party standing there. You better figure this out, or the whole weight of their future, lays at your door. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just took that pressure off because I realized it was of my own making. It was kind of my own, stuff from my own childhood past and things I've internalized. And now I'm just replaying as an adult. So I got professional and I decided to set homeschool hours. So I actually have a routine. We do 4 days a week. That's what works really nice for us. Kind of earn my weekend. But if I do a really good job all week and I hit certain, barring illness or other, just life
Yeah.
happening, then I get Fridays off. And who doesn't love PD days on Fridays? Because I grew up in
And
public school.
yeah.
So I
And
decided to always have Fridays off.
such an incentive for the children too. And
Yeah.
then here, you don't live too far. There's so much beautiful snow on a Friday.
And I'm that homeschool mom who doesn't do snow days because I'm like, meh. So I
Okay.
have negotiated that on the first snow day of the year, I call a day off.
Yes, that's funny. I did that too. Always.
Because otherwise, the buses aren't running. So there's the dining room table.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
setting strict hours for myself where what does that look like? I don't take calls from anybody other than my husband or maybe my sister because they only call if it's like really quite frankly a crisis. They know I'm working. They wouldn't call me at work if I worked outside of the home, right? They would respect that it can wait. It can wait. So sometimes my mom doesn't realize or a friend may not realize I'm working right now and I'm giving my professional best to my children during certain hours. I'm totally present. I'm not trying to uh, answer my friend's texts on a phone or, do this with that or scroll or whatever. I just choose to be present for certain hours. And what helped was just creating a schedule and saying, these are our homeschool hours. This is, school's in
yeah.
session. And then because then from there I'm able to then make it into smaller blocks of okay, the first hour after breakfast, which is the best hour of the day for most people, our brains are fresh, we're hydrated and nourished and ready to go. We hit math first things first because that's kind of the toughie. And it's good to hit when your brain's fresh. And then I was able to develop a flow to the day. And I'll get more into that of what it looked like when I began to add other kids. And then I had little kids who weren't schooling at all. And we lived in a 3-bedroom townhouse at the time when I was first starting to manage having many children. So one of my advantages was a smaller home because I had the littles in the living room and they would play okay for about 45 minutes before things started to go downhill.
Okay.
And the toys weren't as fresh and somebody took my this and there was a little minor crisis. And I could have the kids starting in the dining room. And I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't taking calls. I wasn't trying to be a church volunteer or a friend and neighbor. I was totally 100%. I'm homeschooling like a pro and I'm here. And when if you were at a professional setting, you wouldn't also be calling your church and calling your mom and doing that, right? You'd be like, no, I'm working right now. I'll wait for lunch break. And I do. I give myself from 10 to 10:30, we take a break. I have a cup of coffee, scroll on my phone, give myself a break to pace myself mentally. But I was able to find a way to get the little kids the schoolers started in the dining room while the littles were playing in the living room, because toys are fresh and new every day. And sometimes we would rotate toys, so they would be exciting every 3 months. There'd be like all new toys, but they were really just coming from bins in the basement.
Nice.
And then I was able to get a good 45 minutes in. And for littles, you know how it is when they're 6, 7, 8 years old. I wasn't trying to copy what we call the big schools, how they do it. I didn't have a bell that I would ring and we would go for 6 hours. I found that I could compact so much good learning in actually an incredibly short amount of time. And that's an educational philosophy of like, how much time do you really need to spend on different subjects? And I chose, and part of me, I'm just speak frankly as a Christian, was choosing to believe that this could be done, that God had led me to homeschool, and that my efforts would be fruitful, even if it looked different than the way other people do it. It's going to look different than the big schools or the public schools and institutions. It's also going to look different than a small family model. And that for me was also a road of trust. Is what I'm doing academically as a mother, will it be good? Will I have served them well in this little window that I have to prepare them for life, for godliness, for their futures? It's a lot of pressure, but when I took that pressure off me and I said, I trust that God will give me wisdom to parent my children in this way at this time, huge pressure off, pressure off. So that was both faith and practical skills. And where those two meet, it gets a lot easier.
You also mentioned something really important I was going to bring up later, but I'll bring up now, is comparison is the thief of joy. And so when our homeschool environment doesn't compare to the public school system, my homeschool environment doesn't compare to your homeschool environment. Right. I can't compare myself to you. I can't compare my children to each other, or my children to anybody else's children. So that's a really important thing to remember also. So thanks for bringing that up. And just setting those realistic expectations for ourselves. Very, very important.
I will say it's good to know like the law. So you do know, you're keeping it clean, like where are because it does vary from province to province and state to state if you're in the US. So it's good to know that as a baseline, but then it's also to know where you have freedom. You really do. There's no judge, looking down on you. You won't be getting a report card from God or from your, legislators telling you, bad job, badly done. So that freed me as well to know the extent of the law and then how much freedom I had to design and craft a life. And every year I do reflect over the summer and say, what went well? What did not go well? And I am never doing it that way again. We can change. So I gave myself grace to learn and to grow and to pivot as necessary. Like, you know what, today we're going to take the day off because I just need to take a day off for mental reasons and the kids are happy. Or sometimes I'd have a shorter day, but most of the time I just got into a good flow. And it was, expectations and taking all that pressure off right there gives you more clarity of mind and peace of spirit to make choices and changes as you go without feeling like a perpetual failure.
Yeah. One of the things that you say often is grace, to give yourself grace. And you said it again there. So that's
you hear me say that a lot.
Such an important thing for us to remember. You will share some ways that people can connect it with you. One of the things that I saw was I think it was a Facebook Live that you did. And you shared 3 very practical tips for parents homeschooling more than, I guess, multiple children, however many that would be. Can you share those with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have the privilege of hosting a Big Family Moms Facebook community that's growing by leaps and bounds as people are hearing about this big family mom with 11 kids who happens to homeschool. And so I do share from my life in there. And I did do a Facebook Live that I've archived in the group. And one of it was, people are like, how do you do it with multiples? So one of them was, I just shared the routine. And I also shared the second big tip, which was focus, by protecting those hours and treating it like I would a professional and not a hobby. I'm like, no, I'm really homeschooling for real, mom. Like, you can't just kids any day because I have the flexibility. So I would let her know they're available on Fridays if you want to have a visit with, school-age children, something like that. Like, I took myself seriously and I took the homeschooling seriously so that other people would take it seriously, and maybe stop calling during my working hours. So, or I just quite frankly let it go to the voicemail. Like I said, I also paced myself by taking a coffee break at 10 o'clock. That's when I give the kids a little, some crackers or whatever, and I could scroll on my phone so that I'm still me. I'm still a woman who also homeschools. So the third tip was staggering. And yeah, so I'll just share that concept. And it was sort of intuitive. And I think many moms will eventually start to do it. And I just, like I said, figured it out the hard way. So maybe I can save people some time and pressure. So one was believing that God had given me the ability to learn, that I could learn how to do this. And it's okay if it was a little stuttering and a little bit of reflecting and learning and so on. So like I said, I think I've alluded to it, is I'd get the older started right after breakfast. So if they were able to do like a sheet of math equations or something, and they had that level, they'd already learned basic reading, basic addition. Then I give them their work and say, okay, you go get started. They have their seat, have their hours, they have the dining room table. That's where we homeschool, just works in our layout. And then I would sit beside the littlers who needed mommy to be right beside them, or they would be gone all over, staring out the window, picking their nose, whatever. So what it looked like with my twins is I'd have one twin on one side, one twin in the other. And I would just kind of, sometimes we do the same. Like you said, your kids can be so close in age. You can actually do a lot of subjects simultaneously. But then the questions that I would ask them, I would do based on their academic or developmental ability. So maybe I would read the same science lesson from the cool science book, but then I would tailor my questions as we would talk about it. And so then you can actually hit a lot of birds with one stone. So that's a very common approach. Personally, I use the Sunlight curriculum. People ask me all the time, what kind of curriculum? Like there's a magic curriculum. I use Sunlight. It's a good fit for us, and it allows a multi-age approach when your kids are within about 3 academic years of each other. So it was a really good fit for me. Plus, they have a lot of living books. I love living books. So that's what I do. And then meanwhile, I'd have the littles in the living room. Like I said, if somebody started screeching, I could just, excuse me, carry on at the table. I could go take care of them. Also, this isn't something I shared in the live, so here's a bonus. When one of my kids were getting up to school age, like they were about, I started at 6. The September of the year they turned 6 is the law in Ontario. So over the 6 or 7 months leading up to that September, so kind of January on, I would begin to expose them to homeschool by expecting them to sit for 10, 15 minutes and color at the table. I would buy one of those really big coloring books that are gigantic, and it takes them a while to color. Melissa produces them. They're awesome. And they would get to color the whole thing only at that time. So it became the special time for them. And I was just getting them exposed to like sit. It's kind of like the kindergarten, right? I'm like, really, you're not learning a whole lot, but you're learning how to be in this setting. And then we would even flip the page over and they would have the big white background. And I'd start, with like little lined letters and get them to learn their name, which everybody loves to learn their own name. So I started to do a little bit of preschool so that in the September, I also, for me, wasn't overwhelmed with sort of like the shock of bringing in another student on top. So I kind of transitioned into my flow, and it became easier to stagger not only adding a kid, but also doing multiple kids at the same time. And I aim to be done. At this stage, I have a 17-year-old is my oldest, so she's in upper high school level, and I have a 2-month-old on the floor. And so I've got all the ages. I've got high schools, I've got beginning high school, I've got, grade 5, grade 6, and beginners and toddler. Like I've got the whole
toddlers and babies, yeah.
But I no longer feel nauseous when I'm adding a new one. And that just comes with experience. The part of it is like, give yourself some time to learn a job. I also need to be done by noon. I've just decided that's what works for me. That's where I feel calm and I feel healthy. I feel I feel good equilibrium. I feel very happy with the progress that we're making. And I use my curriculum as a guideline of how we're progressing. Nobody is experiencing any significant kind of delays. And if they did, which is how you and I met, then, we took care of that when we experienced our first, something's wrong here. I didn't have any problems until baby number 5. And I was like, I'm doing the same thing, but it's not working right. And because I had a pattern and a routine, something that required special attention was very obvious. So I didn't stress out when I saw that at first. I was easier to observe. And that, because I think one of the big family mom fears is that someone will fall through the cracks. that will be like the old woman in the shoe and we won't know what to do. And somebody's going to academically suffer and they won't be literate. And we'll be like, I'm so sorry. I screwed you up through homeschool.
Miss that.
Yeah, but I didn't miss it because, first of
No.
all, the ratio, right? 1 against 5. I'm very involved in that. I see them all. I'm home all the time. I like get out for church and groceries. So I was able to notice it because even though we only do formal academics 4 days a week for about 4 hours, some of those kids are 45 minutes. Some of the older kids go longer and they have their own homeschool bins that we keep in a cabinet. They just grab and go after breakfast. My high schoolers are independent now and I check in with them once a week because they've earned that level of trust.
Yeah.
Like I didn't just release them into that. We took years to get to that point where they even design their own schedules now. And I just check in and we talk and we have great talks, but I'm really just facilitating their education. I'm not doing it for them anymore. So I worked myself out of a job, Diana. I was like,
Perfect.
I heard about that wonderland that high schoolers don't need you to treat them like 6-year-olds. And it's true.
Yeah.
So it's not as if I'm doing the same thing with everybody at the same time.
And
it has a stagger effect.
Yeah. I was going to say, I mean, that is our goal as parents, is to prepare our children for adulthood. And one of those is to create their time management skills and create their own schedule and motivation and everything else that goes with that. So well done, Tara.
Thank you.
I
don't get a lot of those well done, so I appreciate that.
I'm very serious too. I put out in our Spark Homeschool Parents Facebook group, I put out a poll. I'm just going to add that to our screen here because these are some of the like real fears and concerns that homeschool parents have. And the one that ranked the highest is with so much commotion going on in my house, my children won't learn. The next one is I'm not spending enough time with my older children, followed by I'm not spending enough time with my younger children. And then the other there is trying to fit it all in and just having like high unrealistic expectations. But these are the fears, like you said right from the beginning, that we put on ourselves.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I would love to talk to those if you'd like.
Yeah, well, I wanted to, this is what we're going to sort of tackle now, the yes, my children will learn aspect of this title, because homeschooling multiple ages, keeping your calm, I think we can do that now. But still in the back of our mind, having that fear of, will my children learn?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like if I was talking one-on-one with somebody, then of course I could ask very specific questions to really get an idea of like their exact situation. So I'm speaking kind of broadly here. One is like I had those fears before I even started homeschooling. So part of it was connecting with other veteran homeschoolers who had gone ahead of me, who had children who were, grown and had grandchildren now. So that inspired my courage in the land of the unknown. So that's something I'd recommend if you haven't connected with a local homeschooler community or even just a friend who homeschools. And there's lots of virtual communities as well that could be like a resource to you, because then you can find out I'm not crazy, I'm not alone. I have support if I run into any problems, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel and figure it out yourself. Because I think we feel our inadequacy. We're like, I don't have a degree in this. And we do have this idea, this mindset in the West that only professionals can educate.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a whole other great talk. I've been to lots of homeschool conferences where that has been addressed. And it's not just a rah, boost yourself kind of hype or anything. Like there really is a lot of data to support that parents are totally qualified to educate their children. And like I said, if you run into something that's unusual, you are genuinely concerned that you've run into a developmental or an academic issue that's a bit outside of your pay grade, there is help, there is resources. Mm-hmm. The first thing I did when I ran into something that I was concerned about, and it took me 2 years, I just kind of did this wait and see. I'm like, let's not overreact, to give it some time. But after discussing with my husband, I'm like, something's a little different about the learning pattern with child number 5. That's when we decided to consult. I just asked some homeschool friends privately because I was a little embarrassed. I was like, I don't want my people in my life to be like, see, told you homeschooling was good. Because you're going to have people in your life who they mean well. And, they're just trying to prevent anybody from getting hurt. But those aren't the people I confide in when I'm having maybe doubts or I'm troubleshooting a problem.
Yeah, I think it's important too, something that I learned over the years, which maybe you were faster at learning too, is the performance or the actions of my children are not a reflection of me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to definitely detach yourself from that, because sometimes we do. All of your hangups and all of your stuff will come to the surface by homeschooling.
Yes.
And I chose to take that as an opportunity to grow, to rather than condemn myself, to realize, hey, it's okay. I do have a backstory. I do have some beliefs and some ideas and some assumptions. And this is a great opportunity to actually work them out. So finding either a community or a counselor or somebody who can act as a healthy sounding board, even if it's a professional grade, to help you work out some of your stuff. Because usually a lot of those fears are natural, they're normal. And you could step one, just work it out with yourself with a process of reflection, but there might be some bigger hangups. Like you may have had some traumatic stuff happen in your life. And now you're carrying all of those fears into this, life moment, this season with your own children. So if you do think you're having some stuff with yourself, I'd say reach out and ask for some help. And how I did it when it was an academic concern, or if it was a more of a personal, like me concern, is I just privately asked some trusted friends who also happen to be homeschoolers and have been doing it a little bit longer than me, just to ask quietly. I wasn't even ready to post in a big forum. And if I had, it would have been anonymous. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
Say, how did you handle this? And there's great, like, obviously you're a resource available to say, here, I can point you to some suggestions. I think it just helps when you're afraid that your kids will fall through the cracks, you won't be able to handle it, is connecting with other homeschools and literally just asking, so how'd you do it? And you almost like start polling people and finding out some good tips, and you'll find the ones that make sense for you. And then you almost have, it can seem overwhelming, but another way to look at it, kind of just change the framing, is I have so much help available to me. My biggest problem is going to be choosing which I will avail myself of. So and you can simplify the process by just asking one trusted person, one or two trusted friends in your world, or making some new friends if you don't have them in your local community. And the online community is wonderful. There are a lot of safe places and groups available like Spark Homeschool Parent that can absolutely be a resource to you. So you're not alone.
Yes, that's so important to know. I think something else to realize too, when we're just like broadly thinking homeschooling, are my children going to do well? That academics are not the only part of preparing our children to be productive, happy adults either. So there's so much more that we can provide for our children. Another thing that I wanted to bring up is, when we're have that curriculum and maybe it says that our child should be doing multiplication or division or something at this age, but they're not quite ready for it, does it really matter if they get it the next year? Like, our children are not going to be 20 years old and not know how to add, subtract, multiply, divide. And I must say also, and I'm sure you have many more examples in your life, but when our children find something that they're really passionate about and create their own goals, they are so excited about stepping out and learning more.
Totally. That's why I do start to get my children involved in creating their own schedules. So we take the base curriculum and then they actually start to take time on the computer and create their weekly schedule. Because I do develop like a custom schedule. I don't do everything that I could possibly do because that could actually get overwhelming. I just find what are my priorities academically, and also other, like you said, other non-academic priorities. And I create a schedule for the week. I have a slot in the week every Wednesday afternoon when I create schedules for everybody. Some of them are just in my head. They're like 6-year-old schedules. It's the same pattern every day. And we do couch schooling. Actually, we don't even do it at the table. We couch school with the 6-year-olds. So we just snuggle up on the couch, and I'm usually nursing the baby at the time. So I have found ways to do it. And like I said, there are some days when I cut it short. I'm like, you know what? All we're going to do is read a chapter from our book today. And that's okay. Because like you said, if you just look at it in the here and the now, it can be anxiety producing. But if you look at the big picture of, yes, by the time they're 20, they will know how to use the toilet. They will know how to, everything. Like you're in the thick of toilet training and it's not working. And it looks so easy for all these parents who are like, toilet train your child in 24 hours, and you're like, what am I doing wrong? I'm so incompetent. You'll get there. You'll get there. Even if it looks different than someone else's way that they got there, even if it's a year or two later than they got there. Yeah. And if you're concerned, reach out for help and support. That's definitely my probably biggest takeaway is you're not alone. A lot of people have walked this road ahead of you. So we don't have to all act like pioneers in a strange land.
Yeah. So just as sort of a summary of our time together, one thing that's so important is setting those realistic expectations right from the start. The 3 practical tips that you shared were creating that routine and focusing. Yeah, I love that you compare that to a full-time job, because it is a full-time job.
It is.
Or mornings.
I have a bonus tip. I'm just like, I feel like I have to tell you this.
Yeah.
Because in the time we have, for another thing I do is, as soon as I think that it's safe and appropriate, I begin to do a buddy system, which many big families do just naturally. Like you would do it at a park. You'd be like, okay, 9-year-olds, I'm busy with 2-year-old. Would you please play with the 4-year-old? Just, because you just use what you have in front of you. And some people are like, oh no, I don't want to have the big kids raising the little kids. That might be a hang up or a fear that you could just work out. Instead, I just use like 30-minute buddy systems. So I will have an older child. Sometimes they're still within earshot. Again, I'm not going to put them in a dangerous situation, but I'm at a point now, the sweet spot, as it's known in big family communities, where I have teenagers who, what I have right now is I have 1-hour breaks throughout the morning where each of my older children takes an hour with the toddlers. So they have an hour. They can do their lessons at the same time if they want, but if they want to take an hour off and just chill out and draw or hang out with their little kid brother or sister, they do that as well. So that wasn't like that in the early years. So I shared with you the early years, but now that I'm in the sweet spot years where I have olders and youngers, I'm able to now involve my children in serving and learning how to be with younger children and serve their family, because we're not farmers. We're a big family. And so this is what it looks like. It's great life training for them. And none of my children have in any way indicated they feel resentful or taken advantage of, or why aren't I getting paid for this? It's just, this is our family. This is how we love and serve each other. And I give my older kids lots of free time where they're not expected to babysit basically and watch the bills. So I just keep my eyes out for when they can begin to help. And even if they're just playing in the other room, or now they're at a point where they actually take their toddler to their bedroom or another safe kind of lockdown area with baby gates and stuff, and they just chillax for a little while. And then I'm able to be very present on the main level of the house where we do our homeschooling, and even catch a cup of coffee while it's still hot, which is such a blessing.
Nice. Thanks for sharing that, Tara. I also want to say again and again to families that question sometimes that it will work out. It will work out with, like you say, support. And even if it's just that one person that you can confide in, or a group that you can be part of, like Spark Homeschool Parent, or you have some resources also.
Yeah, if anyone wants to connect with me, you can find me, Tara Lee Hills. I'm on Facebook, just my profile. Or if you happen to be a big family mom, or I've got people who aren't even big family moms, I have a Facebook group myself where I love to share about my life and my experience as a big family mom. Of course, I do touch on homeschooling, but it's more to come alongside parents of 3+ children, that we can overcome struggles, come into bigger families, and grow in grace and skill together. So that's the Facebook group. I can put it in, or maybe, I don't know if you put it later, the link to the group.
I can do that, yeah.
Yeah, it's just called Big Family Moms, and you'll see my pretty face, and there you go. We can connect.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you very much for joining us, Tara.
My pleasure. And I wanted to thank you so much for having me on. In fact, I've got a little thank you gift I'd be happy to share with you. I'll send you a message after. I don't know if I can put it in the chat, but it is just something I put together called How to Be a More Calm Mom, because I get asked that a lot. Because I know sometimes when it's all coming at us from every direction, I'm only human, and suddenly yelling can try to just bring the noise and the commotion down. But then I feel terrible. Like you said, the guilt afterwards of
Yeah.
resorting to that kind of angry, scary mommy kind of moment. So I've shared from my life some things that have really helped me be a more calm mom. And I'd love to share that with anyone else who picks this up, whether it was live or later, to help equip you to be a more calm mom, honestly, no matter how many kids you have.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, we'll send that out to everybody. Yes, thank you again. So this has been Spark Homeschool Parent. My commitment is to provide an encouraging and non-judgmental community where we can share our questions and our doubts and our fears about homeschooling. And to be part of this conversation throughout the week, you're welcome to join me at Spark Homeschool Parent, which is a Facebook group, and Tara's Big Family Moms. And I'm here every Friday at 1 p.m. Next month, we're going to be tackling that S in Spark again, where we're going to start exploring again, discovering our children's strengths. Thanks again, Tara. Look forward to seeing you again. You got lots to share with us.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me on. If I can be a resource to you or anyone else, whether in a future interview or just connecting one-on-one, I'd love to do that. So thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Okay. And just remember that as homeschoolers, we can help our children find that spark that ignites their learning.